Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election in a scenario if RFK were to drop out and endorse Donald Trump, because his VP, Nicole Shanahan, has stated herself that she and RFK are debating or figuring out on whether if they are going to drop out and endorse Donald Trump in order to prevent Kamala Harris from winning the election, because he believes that he is taking more support away from Donald Trump at this point rather than Harris. And we're going to be seeing the electoral map in a scenario if he were to end up dropping out, because it could be a potential realistic scenario. But before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed as we are approaching 4,000. Click the bell so you don't miss out on my content. Press the like button, share this video, as well as we do have memberships. If you are interested, you can find a link to that in the description section. Now back to the topic of today's video. I'm going to be filling out this electoral map. If RFK were to drop out, will Donald Trump gain support in a number of these battleground or swing states? So let's start off with the typical likely states, now moving into the solid column or safe column for both of these candidates. Starting off with Kamala Harris, I do think Colorado is now safe. Solid blue, the state's actually getting bluer. Democrats are gaining in terms of new voters, and I think especially considering Tim Walz on the ticket, I think that can definitely help Harris in a state like Colorado especially. And then you have New Mexico. I think the state is likely for Harris, if even despite regardless if RFK were to endorse Donald Trump or not, both of the states will not be competitive whatsoever at all. New Mexico would go to Harris by somewhere in between 7 and 10 percentage points. That's the margin. Albuquerque is a Democratic stronghold county. It's really hard for Trump to overcome the votes, and there has a lot of white liberals. And then you have the Iowa, I do think, is also now solid red for Donald Trump. I expect him to win that by over 10 percentage points, cracking double digits. And I do think Ohio is going to remain likely for Donald Trump, as well as Florida. I think both those states are lost causes for Democrats at this point, especially Florida. The entirety of the state has really abandoned the Democratic Party. Miami-Dade County flipped from blue to red in the midterms to DeSantis, and also Hispanic voters, especially Cuban Americans specifically, are really trending towards the right. I also do think Texas is going to be likely for Donald Trump if RFK were to drop out and endorse Donald Trump. I do think he'd win Texas by probably 8 percentage points, especially considering that the border is a mess, and also that issue is a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She can't address that, and immigration is just not good for her. And then you have Minnesota. Obviously, you have the Tim Walz VP pick selection effect. I do think that will impact this state specifically, and obviously you have that home state electoral advantage. So Minnesota is likely for Harris. Even if RFK were to endorse Trump or not, it does not matter. I do think Harris would comfortably win this state by probably 7 to 8 percentage points on election day. And then as for the lean states for both of these candidates, I do think that Nevada is going to be lean for Donald Trump, as well as Arizona as well. And even the state of North Carolina. I think those are the 3 lean states for Donald Trump if RFK were to drop out and potentially endorse him as well. Let's start off with Nevada. I do think if Trump is in order for him to win a state, he would have to flip Washoe County, as well as have skyrocket turnout in the Vegas area or Clark County as well, among Hispanic voters as well. That is key to his victory, and I think he can do exactly that. And then you have Arizona, in which I think this state is very important, especially considering RFK is in this race, because I do believe that if he is taking away more support from Trump, Harris could potentially actually flip this state, and that's exactly what a lot of polls are actually suggesting on 538. Not so much on RCP, I would say. He would obviously have to flip Maricopa County. Maricopa wins a bind by 2 percentage points, but in terms of demographics and shifts, Arizona is a left Chinese state. The state's actually getting bluer. They elect Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs for the first time since, I believe, 2009, back in the 2022 midterms. They also have a Democratic senator. So statewide, Arizona is going to elect Democrats, for the most of the time, up and down the ballot. In the future, don't be surprised if they keep electing Democrats consistently. And then the lean states for Kamala Harris in this scenario, if RFK were to drop out, Virginia would be lean for her. I think she'd win that by probably 3 percentage points, as well as New Hampshire. I think she'd win that by 4 to 5 percentage points. Now, if RFK, were not to drop out, I do think New Hampshire would actually be likely for Kamala Harris by probably 6 or maybe even 7 percentage points. But if he were to drop out, I do think New Hampshire can get slightly more competitive and closer, but still not enough for Trump to overcome. Obviously, there's a lot of college-educated voters, and I think Tim Walz can really carry Kamala Harris over the top in New Hampshire. And then you have Virginia, in which the governor, who is very popular, Glenn Youngkin, actually endorsed Donald Trump. He's trying to mandate paper ballots only on election day, which that can really go to Donald Trump's benefit ultimately at the end of the day. And now moving on to the tilt states, I do think there are none for Harris in this scenario, but for Trump, it's going to be Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, as well as Pennsylvania. Those three most important Rust Belt states that can be the deciding factor of who wins this election, especially Pennsylvania, which could be the tipping point state as we all know it. So let's start off with Georgia. Obviously, it comes down to those 10,000 voters that Biden ultimately won this by just 4 years ago. And their lawmakers in Georgia legislatures are trying to pass, all absentee ballots have to be submitted by 8 p.m. and they won't be accepted later, which that means the state would be called faster potentially on election day, which that can also help Donald Trump. And also a Pennsylvania judge ruled that they won't, they won't start accepting ballots. They're trying to, put in strict, rules that really could take away some of Harris's potential support. And then we have Wisconsin, in which obviously Milwaukee is the main reason why Biden had won this state in 2020, as well as Door County. Trump must flip Door County, which I think he can. It only went to Biden by 1 percentage points. And if Trump is able to have skyrocket turnout or, overperform the polls or expectations in Green Bay, some of these stronghold Republican counties, I think he can win Wisconsin. Obviously, it's going to come down to those 20,000 voters that he originally lost the state by, margin of 0.6%. So, considering that Wisconsin was the reddest Rust Belt state of the three in 2020 and in 2016, and I believe the Obama era as well, I do think Trump probably win this state, especially considering if RFK were to drop out and endorse Donald Trump. And then you have Michigan, which this was the bluest Rust Belt state of the three in 2020. It almost went to Biden by nearly 3 percentage points. So this one I'm a little bit more skeptical on, but considering that there was a large uncommitted vote, roughly 100,000 voters voting uncommitted in the Democratic primaries, now I do understand that was against Joe Biden and not Kamala Harris, but if Trump is able to, put out the correct messaging and place cards correctly and tie the Kamala Harris record to the Biden administration, that would make her look bad, especially in this state with the large uncommitted vote. Detroit is actually getting bluer, especially the suburbs in Michigan are really trending towards the left. So Trump's going to have to, really work hard in order to flip the state, as well as the woman vote can really help Kamala Harris. But I do think the uncommitted vote would be enough to potentially give Donald Trump the victory, especially considering if RFK were to drop out. And then you have Pennsylvania, in which Trump is obviously going to have to flip Erie County, as well as, Northampton County. Only went to Biden by 0.7 percentage points. And, run up the numbers in Central County, only went to Biden by 4.5%. And also, considering that he did get shot here, Butler County is next to Pittsburgh, so maybe he can have higher turnout than in recent elections past, usually in the Pittsburgh suburbs as well. The suburbs are really what's going to decide who wins this election. It's not going to be the rural areas. It's not going to be the, I would say, urban areas. It's going to be the literally the suburbs. And also the Philadelphia area as well. If Harris doesn't have, perform in line or in par with Joe Biden's 2020 performance in this state, especially considering those Democratic stronghold counties, I don't think she would win Pennsylvania. And the polls are actually suggesting that Pennsylvania, surprisingly, believe it or not, would be the reddest Rust Belt state of the three, which in recent elections past, you would see that Wisconsin would actually vote to the right of Pennsylvania. So it's kind of odd. And obviously, Michigan, as we all know, is the bluest Rust Belt state of them all. So 312 electoral votes for Donald Trump to Kamala Harris's 226. If RFK were to drop out and endorse Donald Trump in order to prevent Kamala Harris from winning the election. So let me know what states you agree with or disagree with in the comment section down below. Do you believe that RFK will drop out? Why or why not? And will he endorse Donald Trump? One last final reminder to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content, press the like button, share this video, as well as we do have memberships, so you can find a link to that in the description section. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.